Now, you might have heard this stuff in psychology classes and things like that, but it's important to understand what the connection of that is to Sufism, to the Quran. Basically, it goes back to the story of before time began, when Allah says to the angels, I'm going to put my representative on the earth. I'm going to put you on the earth. Because this is before creation begins. But creation begins not just at the beginning of time. Creation begins at each moment. We come into being at each moment. So Allah says to the angels, right now, as well as back in what we translate as pre-eternity, or eternity before time began. Right now, as time is about to begin, Allah says to the angels, I'm going to place my representative on earth. What does that mean? Well, the term is Khalifa, representative, from which we get the word California, believe it or not. It's no joke, actually. I read it in an Automobile Club magazine 10 years ago.
All right.
It was a kind of popularization of a scholarly article. It goes by way of Spain, the way of Spanish, really, seriously. The word California, the etymology of it. But anyway, because it was named by California, whatever Spanish explorer named it in the name of our regent, vice-regent or something like that, Khalifa. And the Arabic word had gone into Spanish and so on. But who is it? What does this mean to be God's representative? It means we're the mirror image of God. We carry into being all of the divine qualities in microcosm, in a mirror image. So, on the one hand, when we do the qualities, that's one way of getting in touch with this aspect of our nature, which is the Khalifa, the primordial nature. The fitra is another term. Fitra means the primordial nature that everyone carries with them as we come into being, both when you were born and also right now. You might have lived a really messed up life up to now, historically, from when you were born. The fact is, though, because we're created at each moment again, at this moment, no matter what you did before, this moment, you come into being carrying this pure fitra, all of the divine qualities mirrored in us. But we have a lot of inertia, a lot of past history, so that even though at each moment we come in, we're born again, each moment we come into being fresh, we carry with us all of this, these pictures, all of this history. And so you might read about this, that you have this pure nature. Somebody like me, I might be saying it, you might read it in CD's books, CD will say it, but it doesn't mean much. Because as soon as we say that, then your mind is filled with who you think you are. All of what you've done, all the thoughts you have, whatever you happen to be feeling right now. So one of the points of the path of Sufism in particular, Islam in general and Sufism in particular, is how to take the mess of your life and immediately see the jewel beneath the surface of it. See how the mercy, taste the mercy that lies beneath the surface of our lives, and see how that's coming into our life. But the problem, aside from all of this history that I talked about, is that from a Quranic perspective, even though we have this tremendous purity going for us, that we're the representative of Allah, problem is that there's a pretty strong voice of shaitan. In the Quran, the voice shaitan looks at Adam when Allah says, I'm going to put my representative on earth, and I've taught him all of my names, meaning I've embodied in the human being, I've embodied in each human being all of the divine names. Because as you know, to teach simply by conveying words, that's just one very minor level of teaching. Deep teaching is when you have embodied it. So don't think simply because when Allah says in the Quran, Allah taught Adam all the names, it was like, I'm going to teach you right now, in A, B, C. No. God taught Adam all of the names in a deep teaching by putting it into the being of Adam. So Allah says this to the angels, and Shaitan is there. And Allah says, so recognize this to the angels. Recognize who this human being is, really. He's my representative, the infinite manifest in physical form, mirrored in physical form. And so Allah says, prostrate. By prostrating, what is meant is humbly accepting, humbly recognizing this. But of course, as he told us, and you've read, Shaitan says, no way, I'm made of fire and Adam is clay. Now, if we were to put that into more kind of everyday speech today, what would Shaitan say? What would Satan say to Adam? Would he say, you're just made of clay? I don't think today, because clay doesn't kind of have that connotation today. What I came up with was Shaitan would say, he's scum. Adam is scum. Now, you may have a better term. But we hear that. We hear that voice. And we say it to ourselves. We unconsciously say it to ourselves. We hear, you are made in the image of God. You are the most unbelievable being in existence. God being beyond existence. But as far as existence goes, you are the most unbelievable being. Not in the sense that you can't believe it, but marvelous, the most marvelous being in existence. You mirror the infinite. And then we respond by saying, oh, come on. Come on, I'm just nothing. I'm scum. Where do we get that? Well, the Quran says we get it from shaitan. Your parents might have also told you that, or your teachers might have told you that when you didn't meet their standards, when you didn't meet their conditions. And that word conditions there is very important. It's the whole structure of the nafs involves a set of conditions that we've learned work for us to a degree when we can fulfill them. Our life is fine as long as it's not fill in the blank. Boring, as long as we're not tired, as long as we're not ill, as long as we understand, as long as we feel good, just fill in the blank. Whatever conditions the nafs has, just that is what we have trained ourselves in. Shaitan and our parents, teachers, society has trained us to believe we need in order to feel good. In contrast, Allah says, in and of yourself, you are a marvel. You are a Khalifa, a representative of all of God's qualities. Now, another thing, Shaitan just doesn't leave it at that. You're scum. Because if he just left it at that, we wouldn't buy into his argument. We wouldn't accept it. It's too much. Instead, he says, you're scum. But if you don't want to be scum, you can be like me, a kind of God. If you don't want to be scum, as long as you fulfill these conditions, you'll be great. And so what happens is we accept that, because being scum is not particularly cool. We'd rather not be scum. And so we unconsciously cut ourselves off from the unconditional mercy and choke off the unconditional mercy and grab onto ourself, what we've learned, one by one, the things that meet the conditions of shaitan, that meet the conditions of that we learned make us feel good and enable us not to feel bad. That litany of conditions is the trade-off. When we meet the litany of those conditions, or hope to meet the litany of those conditions, that's the trade-off for choking off the unconditional mercy. Because when we do meet those conditions, or hope to meet those conditions, then it's like, fine, okay, I've met those conditions. I got that A on that test. That guy or that girl smiled at me. I feel okay. I finally made $15 an hour. I sold my first BMW, whatever the conditions are. We then, when we meet those or hope to meet those, then we taste a little bit of the mercy, but we're still unconsciously choking off unconditional mercy.